Sheriff's offices in eastern Iowa are paying their deputies hundreds of thousands of dollars and in some cases millions of dollars for overtime.
An I-9 investigation has uncovered many deputies are working so much it's nearly doubling their salaries. And the practice has been going on for years. Our chief investigative reporter Josh Scheinblum has spent more than 2 months looking into this. Josh, what did you find?
Beth and Bruce, I have here a federally funded study from the National Institute of Justice that examined the impact of long hours on members of law enforcement. Not surprisingly, among its findings include that those that work longer hours are more prone to tiredness and being less alert on the job. Here in eastern Iowa, there are some sheriff's deputies who are working so much overtime, there are literally tens of thousands of dollars that are being added to their paychecks every single year. And there are some experts who say that's indicative of a problem.
Where you have responsibilities outside of just the day-to-day things.
From running a jail to responding to emergencies to supervising people in custody at hospitals, Linn County Sheriff Brian Gardner manages 122 sworn officers to get it all done. But oftentimes that's not enough people, so his deputies get paid overtime.
You know, we do have some money budgeted for overtime, but oftentimes we'll find that we've exceeded that.
Through an Iowa Open Records request, I-9 has learned the Linn County Sheriff's Office has spent nearly $5 million on overtime paid to staffers over the last 3 fiscal years. And big bucks aren't just being spent there. In that same time period, overtime costs topped $750,000 in Johnson and Black Hawk counties, $470,000 in Dubuque, more than $280,000 in Jones, and nearly $110,000 in Chickasaw. Back in Linn County, Sheriff Gardner says it's important people remember when they look at overtime to consider some of those funds, at least in his jurisdiction, are reimbursed by state and federal agencies.
When we transport federal inmates, we do get reimbursed for that transportation and those overtime costs from the federal government.
I think some would see that, and they would say that, yes, you're getting reimbursed, but it's coming from the same coffers.
Correct.
The coffers of taxpayers.
Sure.
Could you understand why some might still find that concerning?
Not necessarily. The more inmates from the federal government we house in the jail, the less the Linn County taxpayers have to pay toward my operation.
According to the union bargaining agreement that covers Linn County deputies, employees under the contract are barred from working more than 16 hours in a 24-hour period. That's the case even if deputies want the overtime. And in practice, individual deputies can still work a lot. So much so, in fact, top earners are making almost the equivalent of their base salary in overtime pay. For example, Deputy Richard Snow, the top earner of OT this past fiscal year in the Linn County Sheriff's Office, made an excess of $50,000 on top of his annual salary of $65,000 a year. Deputy Snow isn't just any member of the rank and file. In fact, he's the chairperson for the bargaining unit. We invited him to an interview so we could get the perspective of overtime from someone personally impacted by it. But he refused. They refused to talk to us about this story. Does that surprise you?
No, absolutely not, because, again, most police officers, I would say over 90% of police officers, like the overtime because of the money.
This is Maki Haberfeld, a professor of police science at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, who's researched extensively the impact overtime has on police performance. She says the amount of money deputies like Mr. Snow are making is a sign a deputy might be overworked.
I think that mentioning or claiming that overtime is something that is good for police officers, is good for the members of the community, members of the public, is a stretch, and again, empirically not validated.
This has been an issue since I've been on in 2009.
It's not up to Sheriff Gardner to hire more officers. That budget is up to members of the Linn County Board of Supervisors like Ben Rogers.
What does the sheriff need to show in order to get additional deputies and make the case this will bring down overtime?
It is a balancing act of, yes, we could hire more deputies, but that deputy will become more expensive over time. will that overtime reduce enough where it makes sense to hire that deputy?
Paying overtime, Rogers believes, has been a more fiscally responsible option than simply hiring more deputies, arguing when you factor in benefits and retirement plans new staff would receive, it could actually cost taxpayers even more money. But Gardner contends that may not be the case in the next budget cycle, as his department is considering bringing on an additional 3 to 4 full-time deputies.
We are looking at those numbers. Again, we do it annually. You've caused us to look at this a little earlier. And so I have talked with my budget folks within my agency to look at this, and it may be that maybe it's necessary.
Sheriff Gardner tells me that his office does not offer in-service stress management training to sheriff's deputies, but he does say that there are safeguards in place to make sure that deputies are not overworked. Among them include that any overtime must be approved by a supervisor. He also says that they have a 24-hour gym, and deputies are also encouraged to take part in a wellness program that's offered to all county employees. For now, we're live in Cedar Rapids. Josh Scheinblum, KCRG, TV9 News.